Big news coming out of Ashburn as Adam Peters has released the first player that he's drafted in his tenure during the Washington Commanders, being the Washington Commanders GM. They have released linebacker, safety turned linebacker Dominique Hampton, the 161st pick from the 2024 NFL Draft. We tried out 14 players yesterday, zero being wide receivers. To our surprise, they signed Essen Bassie, Antonio Hamilton Sr., and linebacker Duke Riley. We knew about the Duke Riley signing yesterday. The corresponding move was that Dom Hampton ended up being released, with Viliami Fehoko Jr. and Alan George and Lucas Niang and Kevon Seymour entered the reserved injured list. Lots to talk about, lots to chew on. Let's get to it. What it do and what's going on, Washington Commanders Nation? It's your boy Rio Robinson, back with the latest and greatest on the Ramblin' with Rio YouTube channel, where we ramble about our Washington Commanders. It is Monday, August the 11th, and a very unfortunate day for the 161st pick of the 2024 NFL Draft. We're talking about safety turned linebacker Dominique Hampton, a guy that people had high expectations for. It's a guy I've been kind of telling you all off season who desperately needs to show something on a football field. A guy who we did not see appear in any regular season games last year, hampered by injuries. He's virtually untalked about in practices, goes out and has a atrocious preseason game. He's not the only one, though. The linebacker room in general, the team in general, it took Adam Peters and company one preseason game to say, you know what? Let's put a veteran in the back of that linebacker room. We know who the starting pieces are, and allegedly Jordan McGee is the next linebacker off the board. But as far as who else they needed in that room, they go bring in former third-round pick from 8 years ago, Duke Riley. Duke Riley has made more headlines in the NFL as a rapper, as a musical artist, than a football player. So when they're willing to bring that in to replace you, it doesn't say a lot about what they think about you. Does that mean Dom Hampton is completely finished here in DC? Not necessarily, but it looks like it's all but over for him at this point. When they GMs in front offices, they hold very near and dear to their heart players that they picked personally, players that they selected. Like, we talk about this on Commanders Kings, and when I bring up the potential of Dom Hampton not making the team this year and him being a roster cut casualty, Lou always would respond to me like, but you know how they are about guys that they selected. And you usually don't see teams pull the plug on a player they selected just a year ago. But per the words of Jaden Daniels, the standard is the standard. And if you're not meeting the standard, snip, snip. It's time to go. We have not seen anything really positive or productive to go off of from one Dominique Hampton since he was drafted here back in 2024. I get it. He's playing a different position than he's accustomed to, a different position than he played in college. But it goes to show you, when you're a day 3 pick, nothing is promised or guaranteed to you in this here NFL. At any point in time, if the injury bug follows you and you're not hearing we're never hearing anything good coming from, like, literally everyone makes plays in practice. There are some things in practice that are designated to make players look better than they're supposed to. We don't really hear. Remember, I had Lake on the show last week, and I said, Lake, does Dominic Hampton really do anything in practice? Because we virtually hear nothing about this player on a regular basis. And he said, I mean, hey, he looks all right sometimes, but what an atrocious performance in the preseason game. I'm talking on kickoff team, special team, and on the defensive side of the ball. And Kane Madrano didn't look great either, but I imagine he has more leash considering he's a rookie, sixth rounder, and his athletic profile is going to at least give him a hand up on the upper hand on the special team side of things. But it just didn't work out for Dominic Hampton, and we're having a whole job fair after one preseason game. It goes to show you what they think about the current depth on the roster. Speaking of depth, I think fans in certain spots of the team should be concerned about Washington's depth. But at the same time, I think it's a little delusional to think that player 1 through player 53 on the final roster should all be a quality player. Like, Philadelphia did not build that roster overnight. That shit was accumulated over time through a mini draft, free agencies, and via trade. This team is going to contend and compete right now because the core nucleus of the team is fire, and because we got one of those ones at the quarterback position. This team is not ready for contention right now because it has every depth piece on the roster filled out. That is not the case. That was never the case. That was never going to be the case going into year 2. But as a whole, the roster is in a better place than it's been probably in my entire life as a Washington Redskins football team Commander fan. So I think the depth thing is certainly something fans should be concerned about, but I just think it's a little far-fetched to think that every position on the team is going to be like 5 or 6 deep with quality players. That's not how an NFL roster works. And when you do have an NFL roster that's that deep, for example, the Philadelphia Eagles, that shit ain't going to be done in 2 off seasons. That's not happening. We still have more depth pieces to find. Those will be also filled through the draft, free agency, etc. But I don't think there are many teams in the league that can go 6 wide receivers. Like, everybody is not a spoil of riches at wide receiver like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who could throw out Mike Evans, who could throw out Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Emeka Ibuka. They could just go 5, 6 deep at receiver. That's not very common in this league. So depth is most certainly a concern. And clearly, when they go out and release players that they drafted only a year ago, there were actual concerns at this position. And, you know, health didn't help, and neither did the actual production or what they were seeing in the development of the players so far. We bring in Essen Bassie, maybe a primary slot corner / special teams guy, 2020 through 2023, 968 career snaps with the Chargers and Broncos, primarily in the slot, 40 starts and 50 pass deflections when he was at Wake Forest. It says, this is a Lions breakdown, so this is all I can go. They said the relative athletic score comparison for Essen Bassie was Mikey Sanders still. So we're talking about Timu Mikey Sanders still. A poor man's Mikey Sanders still, you know, EBT Mikey. Very similar size profiles with a little bit more weight, a little bit more girth to him. Similar 40-yard dashes, 4.47 to a 4.46. But when you bring in guys like this in the middle of camp, you're not bringing in a potential starter. You're not even bringing in a guy who probably makes the roster. We know with Mikey out there, Noah out there, Jonathan Jones being brought in as an adjacent starter, rotational piece. Essen Bassie is probably not going to make this roster. But in the preseason and during training camp, you need as many depth bodies as possible. I see this as a camp body, nothing more. With a guy like Kevon Seymour going down, you're not really getting any good work out of Kevon Seymour and Bobby Price. Those were always fledgling roster players, the Chris Rodriguez's of the defensive side. They don't really have a role here. So when I see Antonio Hamilton Sr., a 32-year-old cornerback, also signed today, just think of him as new Kevin Seymour. Camp body, new Rashad Wildgoose, new Tariq Fields Castro. Nothing to see here, but we need bodies to fill out the room as certain bodies are dropping, like Lucas Niang tore his ACL versus the New England Patriots last week. And we didn't go completely unscathed from an injury standpoint leaving that preseason game, but 14-player tryout. We released Allen George, who I believe made a play or two in the preseason game, Vihami Fehoko Jr., but Dominique Hampton is the notable player out of that group. So Washington's draft class of 2024 should immediately start making you think we're going to have some very tough conversations by the time we get to the end of the 2025 season if certain players don't pan out. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pull that draft class up on the screen. We know it was Adam Peters' first draft class as the Washington Commanders GM. And though that draft class, the big three of that draft class makes you live with however this class turns out. But guys got to start paying that piper here in 2025, or a lot of that is going to start to look crazy in the light, if you know what I mean. But I'm going to pull up this draft class real quick so we can have a healthy discussion about AP's first class here as the general manager, as a rookie GM. Class is being heavily carried by, when you get a franchise quarterback, no matter where you take him in the draft, it gives everything a boost. It gives everything a facelift in the class. This is Washington's 2024 draft class. Jaden Daniels at number 2. No brainer. Jerzon Johnny Newton. We ended up taking 3 guys in the second round of the 2024 class. Johnny Newton was not supposed to be there. His first preseason performance, phenomenal in the quick flashes he came out there. Tackle for loss, strip sack, almost another tackle for loss, and he sniffed out a screen pass immediately. He's moving different. The weight loss, the haircut, that boy out there extra motivated. Shout out to Johnny Newton. Mikey Sanders still, we already know what it is. We put too much on that boy's plate last year, and he was still able to show so many signs of being a quality player in this league. And even as an extremely undersized cornerback, he learned to sink or swim. And he was swimming out that bitch at an outside cornerback, especially during the postseason. He had 2 interceptions in the postseason last year. Ben Sinnott, this when it starts to get, all right, guys, what do we have here? Ben Sinnott in year 2, he caught a couple passes in this preseason debut. Nothing to write home about, but we need to be able to, by the end of 2025, be able to say Ben Sinnott is not only an NFL tight end, but we would not feel terrified if he's taking over now that maybe Zach Ertz is now hanging it up and calling it a career, even though I think he's going to try to play another couple years because he loves Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels equally loves him. That's his guy. That's the main guy he's looking for out there. But when you take a tight end in the second round, you don't want it to be a fullback. You don't want it to be the next second coming of John Bates. And I like John Bates. We signed him to a 3-year contract for a reason. You expect Ben Sinnott to be the next inline dynamic move around pass catching option tight end. To be determined. I think we see a lot more out of Ben Sinnott in year 2. Brandon Coleman, drafted as a guard to be a tackle, another sink or swim player. As a player who I saw guard the entire time we drafted him, he held it down for us at tackle last year, and now he does not have to experiment out there. Despite fighting through lingering injuries through a good portion of the season, he held it down at tackle for us. Until teams started putting speed rushers out there on him, he was blanketing guys, and he had good performances versus some of the best pass rushers in the league, Brian Burns, Trey Hendrickson. Myles Garrett, clean sheet. So Brandon Coleman, Mikey Sanderstill, Jaden Daniels. Looks like hit so far. I think Coleman's going to be a top-notch guard. Then we got Luke McCaffrey, who's still transitioning, like Dominique Hampton, to a position that he's not accustomed to playing. What is he, in his third year of playing wide receiver in his life? Big year for Luke McCaffrey to prove that he's more than just a practice-style player and not some niche end of roster, round out the room, white skill player. To be determined. Jordan McGee, who is an absolute unit, someone that fans should be excited to see, someone that coaches are so excited to see. Joe Witt Jr. has told us on multiple occasions that there are schemes and packages designated just for this player. And it's been that case since his rookie year because he's flashed so much in training camp right away that they already envisioned a world where his big, rocked up, fast sideline to sideline ass was out on that football field. But here's the thing. Injuries have followed this man like his shadow since entering the NFL a year ago. So Washington has not been able to reap the fruits of his labor on a football field yet. We saw in pieces and we saw him sprinkled in to special teams last year, but we haven't seen Jordan McGee, 58, the linebacker on a football field just yet. And this is the case with the final 3 picks of that class, with the 161st pick, Dom Hampton just being released. Missed most of that season with injuries. No, missed all of last season pretty much with injuries. Last year, he was Bobby Wagner's shadow. We heard about how he's followed Bobby Wagner around the facility and how Bobby's taken Jordan McGee and Dominique Hampton under his wing. That didn't prove to mean anything, because they've already gotten rid of the player in year 2, before year 2, in preseason of year 2 after preseason game number 1. So for certain guys like day 3 picks, fledgling roster bubble guys, the preseason matters for you. You go up and stink the joint up in front of the world. There's a world where you go out there and get cut immediately. I wish Chris Moore was released the same way, but I mean, they need veteran bodies out there at wide receiver at camp right now. And then to close out Washington's 2024 draft class, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. What's in common with the last 2 players I've mentioned? Injuries are following this guy, you know? Javonte actually shown us some flashes last year. He's capable of getting to a quarterback. He's got some motor coming off the edge, and there were a couple games where you could really see. I get it. I get why they why they selected this player in the 7th round of the 2024 draft. But once again, you look at the current injury list in DC. Brandon Coleman missed joint practice. Did not play in last preseason game. Jordan McGee missed joint practice. Did not play in last preseason game. Luke McCaffrey was sick. Not going to include him in this. Dominique Hampton was out there, but it looked really, really bad. Javonte Jean-Baptiste currently sitting practice. So you get my drift? A lot of injuries following, a lot of guys around, a lot of uncertainty. A draft class where you hit on a franchise quarterback, you hit on a corner, and you get 3 starters out of a class, and 1 includes your franchise quarterback. That's a hit regardless. But boy, are the Jaden and Mikey picks carrying the shit out of the 2024 class so far. And you don't want to, the jury's still definitely out on this class. This could turn out to be a franchise-altering draft class. But there's also a world where, when you exclude Jaden Daniels, that this draft class is not the greatest. But I wouldn't call this a Ron Rivera draft class, but we're only in year 2 of it. And now 8 players remain. Let's wish the best for the career and endeavors of Dominique Hampton. Let's hope he finds a team to latch on to. But another one bites the dust as roster moves are being made aplenty coming out of Ortho Virginia Training Center at Commanders Park. So in summary, if you missed me, if you forgot while I was rambling, Washington made the following roster moves today. They signed cornerback Essen Bassie, Antonio Hamilton Sr., and linebacker Duke Riley, who makes music, by the way. We released defensive end Viliami Fehoko Jr., Alan George, and 2024 fifth round 161st selection Dom Hampton, and placed Lucas Niang, the tackle who tore his ACL, and cornerback Kavon Seymour on the reserve injured list for 2025. 14 tryout players, none at the wide receiver position. More corresponding moves awaiting. We shall see. That's all I got for right now. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Until next time, Commander Rio is out.